Welcome to Wrestling Chat with Friends, the Tuesday show. This is our no, not our WCW. This is our WWE show. We're leaning heavy into the WWE product. On Tuesdays, we talk AEW and New Japan and Impact and everything else on Thursday nights. But tonight, we're here talking WWE. I am EJ the Collector. I am joined, as always, by my tag team partner, the axe to my smash, the hawk to my animal, TG. What do you say there, TG?
I'm doing great. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Tonight, you are one of the most devious factions in wrestling history, D-Generation Twitter. What would a faction would look like if Elon Musk came out looking ridiculous? Like, what would Elon Musk's ring attire be?
I don't know. I just know the faction would be innovative and financially extremely successful.
Sounds like maximum male models behind them. Yeah. Elon's title would look like Ted DiBiase's title, right? Except for the dollar sign, it'd be just X's, I think. That'd be cool. Well, let's get into it. We got WWE to talk about. We have a big PLE coming up this weekend. TG, is it a Saturday PLE or no?
Mm-hmm. But it's Saturday night.
Saturday night. I can live with that. I think they should continue with their Saturday shows. That's a popular take here on the show tonight. Let me just say, if you're joining us for the first time, thank you. We are on X, formerly known as Twitter, at WCWF Pod. We're on Facebook and YouTube on our channels, Wrestling Chat with Friends. Join us, share us, tell a friend, why don't you? Before we get into our SummerSlam predictions, let's talk quickly just about Raw last night. Another solid show. Haven't seen any viewer numbers, but those aren't that important to me. What I did like about the show, you mentioned this in our sort of chat we have. Am I correct that your highlight of the show was Drew McIntyre's powerbomb of Gunther onto the table last night?
Oh, I mean, that was really a cool moment. I mean, just visually striking. I don't know if that's my highlight of the show. I mean, I think my highlight of the show is probably, oh gosh, I mean, it was a good show. It was a good show, and I think it was a good build show for SummerSlam. I really liked what they did with Dom and Sammy.
Yeah, that was fantastic.
That segment was really good. That was probably my favorite thing. But that powerbomb was outstanding.
And we'll talk about, with Raw, we found out a couple of things from Raw last night. Liv Morgan was attacked by Rhea and seemingly was put on the shelf. We found out today, I guess, or late last night. That was done because she is legitimately injured. Although no real word yet on what her injury is. But bummer for Liv. She was out for a good long while, not that long ago. Her run has been not as spectacular as it was before she went out with injury. She's been tag teaming with, what's her name? Raquel Rodriguez. They did hold the titles, although she hasn't gotten too much momentum. I think some injuries to both Raquel and her have sort of sidelined them back and forth. And now Liv's hurt again. That's not good, but Raquel, I think her injury is storyline, but yeah, another kind of blow to Liv, but possibly even more important, we found out that another injury coming out of Raw was to one half of the Undisputed Tag Team Champions. Kevin Owens is legitimately injured, apparently. Like Liv, no real specifics yet on when his injury is, but what kind of effect does that have when one half of your Undisputed Tag Team Champions can't compete maybe in one of your big four? It doesn't look like they're not booked right now. Thank goodness for KO. He can still travel and talk on the mic and be in segments. But what does this do when one half of your tag champions is on the shelf for an indefinite amount of time?
I think in the short term, it's from a booking standpoint, it's fine just because the card is already so stacked that even without a tag team championship match, I think they're okay. That was one of the things that, came out this week was that the U.S. Championship is going to be defended on SmackDown rather than at SummerSlam. And the reason sort of behind the scenes it was given was they felt like we've got 9 matches on the card. A lot of them have significant interest and significant build. There's just not room to put more than 9 matches on this card. And of course, I'm hearing that and thinking, I wonder what Tony Khan's take would be on that.
9 matches.
Like let's put another 5 on there.
I got to at least double that, right?
Yeah.
Okay.
But I think in answer to your question, the concern, of course, is long term. What is KO's injury? Like, what is the situation? On TV, they said he has a broken rib. He certainly was still doing some physical stuff last night, so I don't think it's anything too severe, which is good. Short term, I think I don't want to call it a blessing in disguise because it's an injury, but I think it would have created more problems if those guys were healthy, I think, from a booking standpoint, at least for SummerSlam. So, we'll see what happens. I think the larger question is, what are they going to do long term with the tag division? Because I think you have a lot of solid tag teams that really have been in limbo for a while, or maybe running in place because there wasn't really a tag team championship for them to go after for the longest time. Because when the Bloodline was going strong, that was obviously spoken for. Then you finally have Sammy and KO win it, and now they were entangled with the Bloodline for a while, and finally they sort of get disentangled. But now KO's hurt. So where do you go from here? Don't know. I mean, I think there's certainly some good feuds to be had, but it's going to depend on his health and what they want to do with those titles.
We are going to go through SummerSlam, the card. We're going to give our predictions on the matches. Let's get a couple of things out of the way before we do that. And one thing kind of just popped into my head from our discussion we just had. After the WWE draft, I think the consensus was, and I remember you saying it, SmackDown's the A show. It's being marketed like that. It's being pushed like that. It's got a roster of talent that's more dynamic, blah, blah, blah. SmackDown's the A show. Let's look at it now on July 25th. There's still no doubt Roman Reigns and the Bloodline storyline is the number one storyline, number one thing in WWE still. Granted, and that's on the SmackDown brand. There is a very exciting women's triple threat happening at SummerSlam. You've got 3 of the top women competing. Although on Raw, you do have Bayley and Becky Lynch, 2 of the 4 horsewomen. So there's that. You have lots of stars on SmackDown. It is sort of dominated by the Bloodline, though. The U.S. champion, the other singles champion on SmackDown, like we just talked about, doesn't even have a spot on the SummerSlam card. While if you look over at the Raw program, Judgment Day has gotten their footing. They're now a bona fide heel stable. They have the biggest heel in wrestling right now. Seth and Cody are the 2 most over faces in the company. They have guys like Bobby Lashley, around, getting back.
They have the most over heel in the company too.
Right. Most heel, most over faces. And they are a deep, deep, deep roster. Are we still saying that SmackDown's the A show?
I think that SmackDown is still the A show from the standpoint of established stars, but what I will say is the gap has closed considerably, because there's no doubt that since the draft, WWE has made a concerted effort to do as much as it can to develop what they have on Raw. And there have been 2 significant adjustments that they have made to do that. The first is that they've taken Judgment Day and they have made them the centerpiece of the show. It's not exactly analogous to the Bloodline, because the Bloodline is so specifically story driven.
Yep.
But it is essentially the counterpart to the Bloodline in the sense of they are the primary focus of the show from a segment to segment standpoint. And so if you're watching a 3-hour Raw, you might have, how many different segments on Raw intersected with Judgment Day? Probably 8. Without exaggeration, probably 7 or 8 segments.
Sure.
So I think, and they've done a great job with that. And I'll tell you something I was actually thinking about last night when I was watching Raw. I was thinking to myself, and I believe it was during the main event segment where it was the contract signing, and then the rest of Judgment Day showed up at the end. And I was thinking to myself, man, I would have probably bet a small sum of money when they made the decision to kick Edge out of the group. I was like, oh God, this they're DOA now. Like, they had kind of a cool idea for Judgment Day to take people who were sort of middling or maybe underachieving and pair them with this established legend who had turned heel. It's kind of a cool idea, cool, entrance music, all that stuff, cool imagery. And now they're just going to be a group of like mid card. They're just going to go right back to what they were doing. And that was something that I, at the time I was like, this is bad Vince. This is bad Vince creative, where he just makes a snap decision that he doesn't like the way something's going, and he kills it. And it's like, just give it a chance. But they have done such an amazing job to get that group, not only get them over, but every single person has something going on that is distinct yet interrelated. And every single one of those folks is a bigger star, in some cases, by far, than they were 12 to 18 months ago.
Yeah, absolutely.
And so I think
Dom Mysterio. Yeah.
Exactly. And I think that has closed the gap. And the other thing, of course, which is sort of more basic, is they went to the trouble to create a new men's world championship that can be defended on the show and be the centerpiece of the show, which is something that had been missing. And so with those two sort of pieces in place, I think there's no question that Raw is a much better position than it was, immediately post draft.
Yep. And that's a good thing. No one should be in the business of trying to bring Raw up and take SmackDown down some. They should both be celebrated, both be supported, and we've been talking about it for a year, and this has little to nothing to do with Vince. Just the shows have really gotten cohesive and have improved on what they've been doing for years and years and years, and having some really dynamic storylines, not to say fall into your lap, but having this bloodline storyline going on 3 years now is amazing. Having this amazing Dom Mysterio phenomena just helps that cause. Dom Mysterio, we talk about him every week. Should we hate him more because he's the top heel in the company, or should we hate him more because if it was not for him, Rey Mysterio would be having bangers on AEW week after week?
Oh gosh. Well, I mean, if like from my standpoint, like I don't care about AEW missing out on somebody on the roster. I don't care about that. I mean, I think that the thing that's just so amazing about Dom is, you just mentioned this with something like the bloodline, like that's an example of something that is just painstakingly and very creatively crafted from week to week. The Dom thing, I mean, I don't know if I want to go as far as to say fell in their lap, but there's no way that they knew it was going to be like this. Like when they had the idea, it'll be funny, kind of tongue in cheek to make this hardened criminal, and he's going to present himself after spending like an hour in jail as if he's.
There's no way that was the original plan. Yeah.
Well, I mean, but my point is, that definitely wasn't the original plan. But even when it was, I'm sure they were just thinking like, this will be something, kind of funny and sort of a throwaway thing, and we can play it up, and he'll be, a mid-card sort of comedic heel. And people just have reacted so viscerally to hating his guts. And the point I always make is how Dom is over or anybody is over as a heel in 2023 WWE. But Dom is really the only person who this strongly applies to, I think, is that if they hate you so much that they won't even bother to get into the what chant, they will just boo you. Mm-hmm. You know that you've got them. I mean, that's like, they're just like, we're so mad and hate you so much. We can't even fall into our usual patterns. You were disrupting this pattern. So I think that, that's been pretty remarkable. And again, we always talk about this in the group chat. But I always think about, time traveling to like the beginning of 2022 or late 2021 and explaining to somebody like, summer of 2023, Dom Mysterio is going to become the first person ever to main event all 3 WWE shows in the same week. And again, there's just be so many questions like,
right?
Like, did the pandemic just reach a level where there's just no people left? I mean, what's going on? Like, what has happened? Has something happened to the roster? Has something happened?
Like, I think Cheats and I think you were the one who, when we were doing our WrestleMania predictions, you're the only one who we were convinced, well, this is all put together so Ray can put his son over. And
that's what I thought.
I thought you said there was no way. Maybe it was Cheats who said there was no way Ray was going to lose because it was his Hall of Fame weekend.
That was the only match all weekend that I got wrong. And I was like, oh, well, of course they're building, like, this is all building to Dom going over. He didn't go over, and it didn't matter. It
Didn't matter.
and that's the thing. He lost to his dad at WrestleMania. He lost to Cody decisively in the match at Money in the Bank. It's like, doesn't matter. Doesn't matter. And now he has a title. I mean, that's just.
It really is crazy. It really is amazing. We're on the subject of factions. Just getting a few things out of the way before we talk Wrestle SummerSlam predictions. Let's talk about the Bloodline again. We need to get a Bloodline segment in every week because it's the most important segment, the most important thing going on in wrestling. But let's talk about it tonight from a standpoint about Jey Uso. When Jey and Jimmy broke in as the Usos 12 years ago, 10 years ago, something like that.
2010-ish, I think, maybe 11.
Yeah, I'd say that's it. We're going on 12, possibly 13 years at the most. They were a bright tag team coming out of NXT. They did a version of the Haka dance when they came out. They had painted faces. For many, many years, I think probably like during the entire run with the Shield, there wasn't any acknowledgement that the Usos and Roman were family, was there? Like on television? Not really. Their past didn't.
Well,
their past didn't cross all that much. There was certainly.
I feel like it's at some point. I don't know if it was directly acknowledged, but I do think that there was a post-Shield. I think there was a time when they were sort of informally aligned because they were all faces and they would team up like in 6-mans and stuff.
Sure.
It wasn't like the presentation wasn't like it is now, where it's like,
right.
Hey, we grew up together, blah blah blah.
But for a good decade to 11 years. The Usos were a premier tag team. They started out probably like a lot of other tag teams. They had middling success. They were sort of a comedy act sometimes. They would have been involved in a lot of these like angles with a bunch of other tag teams. They wouldn't always come out on top. There was other tag teams. They probably didn't have their first title run for a long time. My point being, the Usos, until this Bloodline storyline, were exclusively a tag team. Neither one of them had really any singles runs of any note. When the Bloodline happened, there was a period of time. Jey has tasted this singles run before. They had their I Quit match, all part of the larger Bloodline storyline. Now Jey is main eventing. We're going to assume that this match will go on last because the Bloodline main events. We know that. Jey Uso, almost exclusively a tag team wrestler, is main eventing not only just the pay-per-views, he's done that before already, one of WWE's big 4 pay-per-views. And I asked a question in the show notes, is there a precedent for someone who was only a tag team, part of a tag team for that long, who is now an absolute, solo headlining star? After I wrote that, I did think of a few, but I think I can make some arguments. So you've had some time to think about that. Is this uncharted? Are we seeing someone who had a only tag team career for a good part of a decade and is now a top single star main eventing?
There's certainly examples of that in the past. I mean, the first two that popped in my head, of course, are Bret Hart and Shawn Michaels.
Okay, hold on.
Yeah.
Before you get to the difference, I'll say this. HBK was part of the Rockers. They were a tag team for a while. I don't know if they were ever the top tag team. They lost their first couple of WrestleManias. They might have had one tag team WrestleMania win before Shawn and Marty went their separate ways. I wouldn't say they were a dominant tag team for any extended period of time. He just happened to be part of a tag team at first.
So your question is there anybody who was part of a truly a top tag team who then went on to be a singles star?
Pretty much. And I'd say about Bret Hart, Hart Foundation had a run as the top tag team, feuding with the top tag team for a long time. Bret so far is like the closest example I might have thought of. And then I thought some more. There are some other examples. Cheetah said Big E and Kofi. Those guys were single stars and got put into a tag team, which became very famous for a long time.
Yeah, they both won singles titles before they won tag.
Here's a couple of names that I threw out: Edge and Jeff Hardy. Like those two were in pretty top tag teams. Not as long as the Usos though. I think But
The difference to me is, and the closest analog I would say is Jeff Hardy, because not only are they, because like with Brett and Jim the Anvil Neidhart, they were kind of thrown together because, hey, your last name's Hart and your last name's Neidhart, so you can be the Hart Foundation. And Sean and Marty Jannetty were just two guys working in Texas. It's like, hey, you guys could be, you're young and you have long hair, you can be pretty boy face tag team. With the Hardys and with the Usos, they are obviously literally brothers, and so I think that's significant because it is a lot harder to escape the gravitational pull, so to speak, of an established tag team if the other member of the tag team is not just some guy that you got paired up with because of a promoter, but rather your actual brother. And so, I think the question for me is with Jay is all these guys that we're talking about now, whether it's Brett or Jeff Hardy or whoever, or the New Day guys, these are guys that we look at with the benefit of hindsight. I think it's still yet to be clear whether the long-term plan is to have Jay be a singles star or whether this is just in service of this very, very good story.
That's true. In 2 years from now, the Usos could be holding tag team gold. They could be together or apart from Roman, but and the Hardys have taken a similar type road too. They're basically a tag team now. Neither one of them are single stars. Did Jeff Hardy? I mean, he defeated the Undertaker. Did he defeat the Undertaker to win the title? Oh, he's been a world champion, but he didn't.
I think he did. I think he beat the Undertaker, and then CM Punk cashed in on him.
That sounds right. He did. Did he main event WWE pay-per-views? I mean, he was. He was. I mean, he was wrestling in a time when there were guys like Stone Cold and Kurt Angle and
but it was after that because he was. This was so the summer of Punk, if I remember correctly, was 11. I think
that sounds right.
And this would have been right before that. So it would have been at like Steve Austin, those guys, and the Rock.
I guess so they were long gone. This was I mean, did Cena and Hardy ever? Did Edge and Hardy main event pay-per-views? I guess so. I don't really remember.
But what I was going to say is I don't know if it was big four pay-per-views. I mean, it wasn't WrestleMania,
right?
Jeff Hardy never main evented WrestleMania,
and neither has Jey Uso to this point. Well, he main evented one night, but that doesn't quite count. Yeah, so like I don't know.
What was the show where Punk cashed in on Hardy? Was that just a SmackDown? I can't remember. Look, it's very hard to remember like 12 years ago.
No doubt about it. I mean, I was just wondering whether because I was thinking about the Rockers and I was thinking about, Ricky Morton of the Rock and Roll Express didn't become a single star. They've been almost exclusive tag teams. It speaks to Jay. It speaks to this whole storyline. But you're right. At the end of the day, we don't know if this is, really the end of the Usos as we know it, or if they're just going to be kind of, going back to this role. So I think, that's my Bloodline take for the night. Do you have is there anything about the Bloodline storyline before? What do you make of the stipulations to this match on Saturday?
So there's something that you had mentioned before the show last time that we never got to. And I think that connects to my answer to the question you just asked.
Yeah.
It's weird to me that Grayson Waller mentioned The Rock on TV.
Yeah.
Stuff like that doesn't happen coincidentally.
Right.
And the fact that they have seemingly been mentioning him more at a time when they're now introducing this seemingly, the implication is that not only is the championship on the line, but also the status as the tribal chief is also on the line in this tribal combat match.
Right.
And so, of course, everybody, myself included, for a year and a half has been fantasy booking an eventual match between The Rock and Roman Reigns. I think at this point, that ship has probably sailed. I don't think there's going to be a match. But that doesn't mean that you wouldn't necessarily see an appearance by if not The Rock, other members of the bloodline, perhaps ones that we haven't seen on TV before, like Rikishi, the father of the Usos.
Surprised we haven't seen him by now.
Yeah, and I think maybe they've been saving that, and because that's the thing about this storyline is it just goes through so many permutations and there's so many layers to it, and sometimes things happen that I think even they were not anticipating. And as we talked about, I mean, I don't think they expected a 6-month Sami Zayn detour for this storyline. I think they thought he was going to be comic relief and sort of the guy who takes pins if they have to have somebody take a pin. And then he caught fire and completely changed the trajectory of both the story and his career. So the point being, I think that what intrigues me about this match is that element of it, because I think you would probably agree, if it's just a straight up championship match, it's not impossible. It's not impossible that Jay would win, but it seems unlikely that they would end. I'll put it this way: if this were at WrestleMania, I would be like, Jay's got a chance, because I've said for a while I felt like this entire storyline, that's the culmination of it. It's something involving Jay and Roman, and they quite frankly went through some of these steps a lot more quickly or in a lot more accelerated timetable than I thought they were going to, because
the breakup, the Civil War, the whole thing. Yeah,
exactly right. And as we've talked about in the past, it's like, if the plan is to have Roman finally drop the championship at WrestleMania, even if he's not going to break Hogan's record, but at WrestleMania next year, you got a lot of stuff to get through before you get there. And even if you are only saving Roman for like title defenses at the big pay-per-views, you still have SummerSlam, you still have Survivor Series, you still have Royal Rumble. I mean, you're talking months and months and months till you get to that payoff, whether it's Cody or it's, Jay, or it's somebody else that is not on our radar right now. And so that's why I thought that the Civil War, like the tag match, would be the main event of SummerSlam. And then maybe you push off whatever's next to Survivor Series and so on until you get to WrestleMania. They're just flying through this thing. And so the point that I'm getting to in sort of a belabored way is, I think that we would both agree that without this sort of added element, that it would be not impossible, but unlikely that Jay is just going to end this thing at SummerSlam, wins the championship, holds it for some number of months, maybe loses it back to Roman, and then Roman eventually loses to Cody at WrestleMania. It's not unthinkable, especially if Roman wants a break or he's going to shoot a movie or whatever. But it just doesn't seem to follow the trajectory of how this storyline has sort of been this very, very slow burn over the period of 3 years. So the tribal combat aspect of it is what intrigues me, because I think that whereas it would normally just be a straight up like back and forth match, a lot of drama, great story, but Roman wins, now there is this element of who's going to be there, whose side are they going to be on, how is that going to play out? So I'm really looking forward to that.
Yeah, I mean, and we'll kind of dive into our SummerSlam predictions, and we'll just start right with this match. We're going to go through the match. I'll just say to start it off, we're going to go through all the matches. When we get to a match you think will open the show, let us know what you think. When you get to a match that will close the show, which I think we're going to probably talk about first, we'll get to we'll get to that, and then afterwards we'll do a couple of prop bets. Okay, so what I think both will agree is going to main event the show, because it's been said by you before, when the bloodline is on a PLE, they are closing the show, and that has rung true for over a year now.
When Roman's on
Roman, and Roman is part of this. Roman is facing his first cousin once removed, as we established last week, Jey Uso. This is for not only the undisputed Universal title, it's also for bloodline supremacy. I think just because, and you alluded to this, because part of this storyline and part of Roman's title reign has been about numbers and milestones, not necessarily a crossroads with any particular one event. A lot of this has to do with just days, 1,000 days, 1,500. We've established before the record that you would think they may be going for, Hulk's record, goes past WrestleMania. So I don't even know what they're doing, but it just seems like SummerSlam's too soon. I think Roman's gonna win in some controversial fashion, some kind of finish where a referee is getting knocked out. If you're Charles Robinson, or whoever you are, if you're drawing that match, you know you're getting the hell beat out of you at some point. But I think at the end of the day, I don't know what will happen, right? Going after the match, but I think Roman will get this 1, 2, 3, remain champion. It is interesting, as you brought up, this supremacy title of supremacy. That red necklace that is seemingly also at stake. Roman's clearly the head, so this sort of stipulation makes me wonder, why would Jay be challenging for the head if there's no chance he's going to win it? So I leave a door partially open, but at the end, I think Roman's going to take it and continue to be champion. What do you think?
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. And I think that ultimately the reason that there's added stipulation is to at least cast a little bit of doubt on this, on the outcome.
Okay.
I think that the most likely scenario that you're going to see is what you said. There will be, some kind of outside shenanigans. I think it will come from someone other than Solo. I mean, Solo will obviously be involved, but I think there will be someone who intervenes who would not immediately be expected before the match, whether it's somebody like Rikishi or whether it is, Jimmy Uso. Something unexpected will happen in that regard that will then set the stage for the next sort of chapter of this story. And I think that, again, to go back to the issue with Hulk's record, it is a challenge if they want him to break this record, that the date will be something like 100 days or some relatively short amount of time past WrestleMania.
Yeah. So
if obviously this is something I'm sure they've thought quite a bit about and discussed quite a bit over the last year plus behind the scenes. If they have already decided, look, the latest Roman is going to lose the title is going to be at WrestleMania next year. That's still on the table, but he's going to lose it. That at least opens the door a little bit for him to lose it at some point before WrestleMania, and then probably quickly win it back a month or two later. But if the idea is we have to have him drop it at the next WrestleMania anyway. So no matter what we do, we know he's going to be short of Hogan. You could have him lose at SummerSlam, or you could have him lose the Survivor Series and then win it back at the Rumble, or win the Rumble, or whatever, however you want to do it. But having said that, while that is an intriguing possibility, I do think that Roman retains the championship.
Is it still significant, and will it play into a future storyline that Paul Heyman's still carrying around two other titles?
I don't think so. I think that's just a facet of his character where both Paul is a jerk, and Roman is. It's interesting. I did not listen to the interview Paul Heyman did with Rick Rubin, but a friend of mine did, and he said the most interesting thing he gave me some highlights, and he said the most interesting thing that from his perspective as a listener was Paul Heyman talking about how they deliberately made this Roman Reigns character different from other dominant champions of the past. So if you look at, whether it's a heel like Brock or a face like Hogan, those guys did not have the insecurities that this Roman Reigns character has.
Mm-hmm. And they've been coming out more lately.
Right. But even going to the catchphrase of "acknowledge me," he has a relationship with the audience that these other dominant champions didn't have, in the sense of he despite the fact that he presents himself as this alpha figure, he needs their approval. He needs their he needs to be consecrated by this audience. He needs to be anointed. He does not merely say I am. He doesn't say I am the tribal chief. He also says, acknowledge me. He needs their acknowledgement, and that's a different facet. So the question about the belts, when I see those belts, of course it was what I was hoping for when he got the new titles. I was like, please let Heyman still bring out the old title. But I think the sort of the character motivation for that is Heyman's being Heyman, but also from Roman's standpoint, it is the need for additional validation and reminders, both inwardly and outwardly, that he is this great figure, because there is some part of that character who deep down doubts it himself. So he needs as many visual cues as he can surround himself with to serve as sort of a preventative measure to keep that doubt from seeping in. So I don't think it's going to play into a storyline unless someone makes fun of him for, like a face he's feuding with makes fun of him for it. But it is a little detail that I love.
Speaking of visual cues and affirmations, we've got some comments in the chat here. It looks like they're coming from my son Eli, possibly my nephew Leo, who, as I mentioned before we went on the air, they're currently on a cross-country trip.
Well, I hope that's who's sending these, because otherwise it's real weird.
Hey, if it's not, I'm a charming guy. We gotta love you, EJ. We did get this is your loving son who thinks you are the best. Eli, thank you very much. Leo, thank you very much. If you're being sarcastic, Eli, that's a good one there, pal. Hope you guys are enjoying your trip. Thanks for tuning in. Thanks for listening. Thanks to everyone who's tuning in and listening tonight on Wrestling Chat with Friends. Okay, let's go to another match. Let's go to another big championship match. This is the second SmackDown match. Is another SmackDown match. We have Asuka, we got Charlotte Flair, we got Bianca Belair.
Yeah.
One's an icon. One has been dominant over the last couple of years, and one has been, a true fan favorite and one of the better heels, Asuka. I have no idea where this is going to go, so I'm going to let you sort of give your reasons why you have no idea where this is going to go.
I was just going to say the same thing. I think of all the matches on this card, all of them, this is the one that for me is the hardest to call. With Jay and Roman, like I said, there's I can talk myself into a plausible scenario where Jay wins, but it's probably Roman. With this one, it's like, well, I could see Asuka retaining and then Io Sky cashes in. I could see Bianca maybe not only winning, but also maybe getting a little more heelish in the process.
It would be perfectly on par for the story for Bianca to win. Sure.
Entirely consistent with the progression of the character.
Yep.
And then, of course, there's always a chance that Charlotte will win because
if she's out there. That's right.
And there's a championship on the line.
Exactly right. I mean, there probably is.
Get to 17.
There probably is some. There's still a March to 17. For Charlotte, Bianca. Like who would bat an eyelash if Bianca, comes from these challenges of two other competitors, and wins the title.
So. Here's the part that's tricky for me, and this is where all that Raw Women's Championship, SmackDown Women's Championship stuff kind of threw me for a loop. So all of the participants in this match and Io Sky, they are all SmackDown superstars, correct? That's correct, isn't it? Yes.
Io Sky
and Bayley. Damage Control's on SmackDown because they're sort of feuding with Shotzi right now.
Right. Yes.
Okay, so good. Okay, so that clarifies things. I will say this. If I had to, bet $1,000 on it, I would say
I know.
Here's the problem. The most Charlotte thing ever would be Charlotte wins the match, Io Sky cashes in, wins the title, and then Charlotte beats her again, or beats her for like a week later.
Is there an easier way to get to 17? Right.
Oh,
If you want,
face the whole time.
right, yeah.
Um, I just don't know. I mean, who the champion at the end of the night? You got four candidates. I'm gonna say the champion at the end of the night is Io Sky.
I like it. If you're going to pull the trigger on Io Sky cashing in that title, like why wouldn't you do it at SummerSlam? It's a great venue for it. It's a great situation for it. Io is certainly ready. The fans, I think, are ready for even a short, Io Sky run. But keeping with the tradition of cashing in and winning in dramatic fashion, I can totally see that. I do think Asuka somehow retains in the match. I will allow the pick of at the end of the night he is a champion but that very well may happen. I think at some point Charlotte and Bianca are going to have to go at it for the privilege to fight the champ again. So somehow I think Asuka, whether it's the mist, whether it's an assist by somebody, whether it's Io trying to get in it, and again Io may be walking out, may show up on SmackDown Friday with the title, but I say Asuka just retains. So yeah, you're correct. Could absolutely go anyway. All right, let's go to our next match. What I have here, let's go to another championship match. This one, in a lot of scenarios, this would main event a big pay-per-view. Seth Rollins, the World Heavyweight Champion on Raw versus Finn Balor. I really thought during either this sit down interview they had 2 weeks ago or during the contract signing, we'd get some hint that we might have the Demon for this match, but it's not rare enough, I guess. And Finn's not feeling that. So Finn and Seth, I think another tough one to predict. I'm not going to go so far as to say this one's tough to call, but at the end of the night, Damian Priest is going to walk out as world champion, but I'm not dismissing that. I think Seth retains. I don't know how and I don't know why, but I think his momentum right now holding that title. I think there's other things that are going to happen in the Judgment Day that don't require Finn wearing that title. They're going to happen soon also, but it doesn't necessitate a title win. So I say Seth goes over. What do you got?
Yeah, I think the tricky part about picking one of the tricky things about picking the women's match is because I have a much clearer vision of what's going to happen here. The women's match is very unpredictable. Any one of those 4 women who wind up being the champion at the end of the night. The reason I picked Io Sky was because I think what's going to happen here is if there is a cash in, that something is going to happen that will end the Judgment Day. So it's either, the poetic ending is Finn wins and he's the champion for 5 minutes and he loses to I almost said Damian Priest.
While celebrating, Damian lays him out. Yeah.
Right. And that would be amazing.
Mm-hmm.
I also think that there's a possibility, though, that what happens is, again, exactly what you said. Really good, great match. 2 guys who have good chemistry. Seth retains. Finn is just incredibly frustrated. He attacks Seth after the bell, after the match is over, lays him out, destroys him, whatever, beats him up with the title. And then he's just thinking about himself, his own frustrations and 7 years of frustration. And then here comes Damian Priest.
Mm-hmm.
And Finn is so resentful that he somehow messes up the cash-in. Now, whether the cash-in actually takes place and then he actually ruins it with a DQ or whatever, or he just gets so mad that he just attacks Priest before he can actually cash in.
Yeah.
But that leads to the dissolution, I think, of Judgment Day. And I think, or at least Finn getting the boot.
Here's what will happen. Because this would key me into that's going to happen.
Yeah.
At some point in this match, Finn's not going to be out there by himself for that match. At some point, Dom and Rhea will appear, and Damian will too. All 3 of them will get involved in this match. if Dom and Rhea come out independently of Priest, I think that will be very telling.
Yeah.
If at some point when the refs first knocked out toward the end of the match or whatever, if all three of them come out to help, bets are off, who knows. But if it's Rhea and Dom, which I could see it being, because there's no way Finn's going to be out there all alone by himself the whole match. If Damian doesn't make an appearance during the match, ringside, there will be some confrontation. I think it could go down, exactly like you say. But
I also think that having that kind of ending, it'll be a better fit in the middle of the card, because as we talked about, this is not going to close the show. It would be a better fit in the middle of the card than if Finn beats Seth, because I think, I like Finn.
I like Finn a lot.
And I think a lot of the stuff that he's talked about, even though he is a heel right now, a lot of stuff that he's talked about, again, I always say this, the best heels are the heels who have a point, even though Dom has no point. And he's amazing, but putting him, he's an outlier in a lot of ways. But Finn's the whole build for this match, he's been exactly right. He's like, you derailed my career 7 years ago. I mean, and by the way, when you did it, you mocked me on TV, like after doing it. I mean, that you are a bad person, and I need to reclaim what is rightfully mine. And all that is legit, and that's what makes this story good. If it were the case that Finn's going over, or that, put it this way, that Finn was going to end the night as the champion, I think you would save that on a normal show for the end, because that's your last bit. Or alternatively, if you're going to have somebody come in and cash in on Finn, you save that to the end of the show, and then Damian Priest, it's a big deal that he's he's the champion at the end of the night. I think in this case, that because that obviously the match can't be placed there, I think that leads me to think it's going to go more in the sort of faction dissolution direction. And that's the other thing. So let me ask you this. So here's the other part I've been thinking about with this, and I think it's a tricky one to try to sort of untie this knot. This is a heel faction, and presumably what would happen would be the three remaining members of the Judgment Day would stay together, and the other two, Dom and Rio, would sort of side with whoever is the heel in this equation. But given the circumstances, let's say, whether he wins the title or not, Damian Priest does cash in. Now, if he cashes in on Finn, I think that has to make him a heel. But again, it's confused. It's the politics of it are the kayfabe politics of it are confusing. So let's say that happens. Let's say, regardless of who walks out with the championship, there is a cash in that gets somebody out of the Judgment Day. Who do you think it ultimately is? And that might be something, by the way, that they save for like Monday, the decision of who's going to be out. But who do you think ultimately stays in and who goes?
The risk of a Judgment Day dissolution right now, would it feel too much like the Bloodline storyline on SmackDown?
That's a good point. That's a really good point.
So I think it doesn't mean that you can't take a member out, and have somebody else. You can bring in, and they've been talking about bringing in other members for a long time. If you want to, I think they have to stay intact. So I think staying intact, means Rhea and Dom and Finn. I think Damian could break out on his own, briefcase or not. I'm still kind of holding out that JD McDonough, NXT star.
Yeah, that was really weird, because for like a week it seemed like, they're laying the ground for this, and he vanished.
Much like Dexter Lumis has vanished off the planet. So I still kind of hold out hope that things like that happen. So Judgment Day, Damian's confronted for trying to cash in on Seth over Finn or over Finn. Damian summarily bumped out. Now, I don't know how well Damian would do as a face. I think he'd do all right to get his legs under him, especially if he's maybe still holding the The briefcase, because maybe then as a face with the briefcase, Seth wouldn't make sense, but Seth's not. I mean, maybe Finn wins. You know, there's a lot that could happen. But yeah, I think they do run the risk of having two similar factions on the shows that are going through internal strife.
I think that's a great point, and I think here's how. So if I were booking this, I think, you know, both guys have proven in the past they can be effective faces.
Mm-hmm.
I think that the order of operations, so to speak, and how the ending of this match plays out is going to determine like which direction it's going to go. Because if it goes, Finn loses, and then Damian cashes in from a moral perspective. Damian's like, hey man, you had your chance. I was just cashing in at the appropriate time. You should be happy for me, but you're not. And then that makes Finn, you know, still the heel, and it makes sense that the heels would stick together. And then to your point, if Damian isn't able to consummate the cash in and still has the briefcase, then you have a really cool storyline where it's like Judgment Day is basically just like part of what they're going to do is follow Damian around to prevent him for like anytime he's going to cash in, like they will mess it up. And then eventually he and Finn, you know, feud or whatever. The alternative is, of course, if Finn wins the title and then Damian cashes in on Finn, then I think that has to be that Finn is the one who goes to separate ways and Damian stays and maybe is the champion at that point, which, by the way, then you have the men's world champion, the women's world champion, and then NXT North American champion.
I mean,
plus somebody else that they throw in there.
You want to keep the Judgment Day as a credible top faction that they are. Yeah, that's one way to do it. Giving Dom a title definitely propels that thought some. But yeah, absolutely.
And I think that you really good point about the parallel between you don't want it to be too similar to the Judgment Day. To the Bloodline dissolution. And I think the way you make it dissimilar is, well, first of all, there's not the familial connection, obviously, but also you immediately plug somebody in, whether it's JD McDonough or somebody else for whoever loses. And if Finn is the one who leaves, it makes more sense to replace him with a JD McDonough than it would if you had like Finn and JD are kind of sort of similar type as opposed to Damian, who I think, you know, it's a little bit more of an eclectic group with him and JD than it would be with JD and Finn together in the group. But either way, if you plug that next person right in the same way that Edge's departure, to bring this full circle, clearly did not signal the end of the Judgment Day, I think that would make it clear that like, no, this dude is out, but the Judgment Day is alive and well and strong and blah, blah, blah. And so then from that point, you can make clear, like, this is not the attrition that we're seeing in the Bloodline. So I'm excited about this. I think it's going to be a good match and something interesting, I guarantee you, will happen at the end of this match.
They've really saved the Judgment Day very well. Other title match is happening, Drew and Gunther. We saw a little bit preview of their fight last night. There was a vicious, Gunther took a wicked power bomb, crunched the table, went end over end. Drew looks great. He's back and he has a sight set on Gunther. There is now, we're talking about title reigns. There is a much more attainable record with Gunther and this Intercontinental title reign held by Honky Tonk Man, right? Yeah, he's coming.
But I don't know how close they are.
I don't know how close. I mean, it's somewhere. It's within. I think 120 days, probably something like that.
I think might even be less than that. But yeah, I don't know.
So that would, lead me to think that they're definitely trying to let Gunther carry it to them, but maybe not. Drew carried that company for a couple years as champion during the pandemic. Who you got in this?
He's Gunther for sure. He is only 43 days away.
Definitely, yeah.
So it would be kind of dumb, I think, at this point, not to have him break the record. It would be a little weird. I think he may eventually lose it to Drew, but he's not gonna lose now. Not when he's barely a month away from a little over a month away from breaking the record. So it's going to be an awesome, hard-hitting match. I know that.
Think it might top the Sheamus Gunther match from WrestleMania.
No, I mean, well, there's two matches. There was Sheamus
and
Gunther
Clash
at
of the
Castle, which was great, and then there was the triple threat at WrestleMania,
right.
which was amazing. It won't. Well, you never say never. It probably won't top those, but it's going to be really, really good.
Yeah, and I think Gunther's going to at the end go over, but I do think Drew might very well be the man who will dethrone Gunther. If we're going to fantasy book for a second, I'd like to have Drew win that title, hold that title sometime into next year when they go back to the UK, and then Sheamus can take it off him to complete the Grand Slam, get his first. That we thought was going to maybe happen at some point at WrestleMania or Clash of the Castle. It didn't happen, but I think that'd be a great finish to that story. Is to have it actually happen. Sheamus does win the title in the UK over Drew. That would let Gunther's title reign come to a very satisfactory conclusion. And
one thing that reminds me of, we may not have time tonight to talk about it. Definitely want to get to the rest of SummerSlam, but at some point we should discuss, because we didn't have a show for a couple weeks after Money in the Bank, John Cena coming out and teasing a WrestleMania in the UK, because I had a lot of thoughts about that, because there's a very interesting thing business-wise that's happening with that I don't think a lot of people have discussed much. Maybe they have. But.
Is it something as simple as WWE panicking because AEW is filling up Wembley Stadium? No, nothing like that.
That's a misconception. I mean, certainly I think that's a factor in why it's not a non-factor, but I'll keep this very brief because I know we're only have a few minutes left and we want to get to the rest of this card. But they wanted Clash at the Castle to be in London. But the problem is and that obviously way predates the Wembley show.
For sure.
What that was really a direct response to is to put pressure on is not AEW, although I'm sure WWE would like to have, to break the record that AEW is about to set. It's really to put the pressure on the London Tourism Board. London, as of last year, became the number one tourist destination in all of Europe, slightly surpassing Paris.
Okay.
So the reason why that's significant is one of the things with WWE major shows, especially Big Four type pay-per-views, is that these are not just like big events, but they actually provide, especially WrestleMania, but also SummerSlam and Royal Rumble even, provide an economic stimulus to whatever market accepts them.
Oh, sure.
So there is a sort of a give and take, a negotiation, a mutual benefit that these cities, for WrestleMania, there's almost like a bid process now, like there are for Super Bowls and things like that. London is not like that, because London's like the amount that you will add to us in terms of tourism is a rounding error. We don't care. Make us an offer, because we are not going to do anything for you that is going to be the same kind of financial incentivization that Miami or Detroit or St. Louis or wherever in the United States or Cardiff would do for WWE, or
Saudi Arabia or India or
Saudi Arabia. Of course, that's that's basically just a giant bribe, but that's a different category. But a place like a Detroit, for example, where SummerSlam's going to be,
Philadelphia, WrestleMania next year,
Philadelphia, Tampa, those places like that are going to offer sort of sweetheart economic incentives, because they know, hey, we're going to make so much money over and above this that these concessions, while they're very attractive to WWE, we're going to get that. That's an investment for us. We're going to get that back in spades by the, in some cases, like with WrestleMania, as you know now, it's really like a 4 to 5 day event, because you have the SmackDown, the Hall of Fame, and NXT potentially, the show itself, which is now 2 nights, and then you have the Raw after. So it's several days. The point being, London doesn't care. So what do? You create public pressure, and you do it when you are, over there in a smaller venue to sort of exert sort of external political pressure. Now, whether that is going to affect the London Tourism Board's thinking, or they'll just be like, we still don't care, remains to be seen. But what that shows me is, I think a lot of people saw that segment and they thought, oh, this is a trial balloon to sort of see like what the reaction is like online and the arena, et cetera, to the possibility, the prospect of a London WrestleMania. The reality was them doing that on TV, even though there were no commitments made and Cena's language was very carefully chosen. That to me reflects WWE really, really wants to do WrestleMania in London.
Makes sense.
It's going to be a matter of whether the economic conditions are right to make that happen.
Interesting. Plus, sticking to Tony Khan, they'll do that, at the end of the day too. But yes, sure. it sounds like it was all sort of.
And so the point I want to make on that is, they still for sure, that's absolutely a factor in it. But I still think they would have done it when they did it anyway, because they were in London, and they I think have been stewing for a year. Again, because Clash of the Castle, they originally wanted to have it,
interesting,
in a large London venue, and they were just like they didn't get the incentives that they wanted, so they were like, we'll have a smaller show there, and then we'll move this to Cardiff. And so I think they are really interested in having a London WrestleMania.
Having it in Wembley, I mean, they've had it in some of the biggest stadiums in America. They're a global business. If you're talking about big arenas overseas, that's the first thing you come to is Wembley. First thing you think of is Wembley Stadium. Let's
not forget that probably means something like a noon WrestleMania start time, which I'm all for.
All for. Ronda Shayna. Do you care? Even if you don't, who's going to win?
I do care. It's interesting to me. I mean, I think Shayna's going over because I think the whole goal here is for Ronda to put Shayna over before she has to leave.
I hope so. This would have been a really big sounding match 5 years ago.
Yeah. Interesting thing. I mean, only other thought I have on this match is I'll be interested to see what, if any, stipulations are in place and what are they. There was sort of an implication from Ronda that it would be some kind of, I don't know, street fight, MMA style fight.
Well, Shayna felt like she was building up to announcing a stipulation in this interview last night, and then said, "We're going to have, I'm going to fight her." Yeah, of course you're going to fight her. We know you're going to fight her. I was kind of, ideally, when you think about it, if they were going to pull off some pit match like with Seth and Riddle last year, like two MMA stars. You can't make the ring an octagon for one match, but you can have however they want to do it. Some sort of, I mean, they weren't going to have a full on MMA fight. It sounds like either, but something street fight, no holds barred, that'd be all good. But
I would just wonder if they do something like they did, like Seth and Riddle did when Daniel Cormier was the referee.
Yeah. Remember what happened at the end of that? We'll talk about that in just a second. You don't remember?
Vaguely, it was weird. Seth was like they were lying on top of the. It was weird.
I meant at the very end when Cormier and Riddle were walking backstage. Remember when the lights went out and someone returned? Yeah, we'll talk about that in just a second.
I blocked that out.
Let's get to maybe the last match we're going to cover tonight: Cody and Brock. This feels like the end of their
inexplicable feud,
feud that we have not got an explanation for. Another way of saying inexplicable feud. This is it is match 4 or 3.
Number 3. The rubber match. They each have a win.
Since he's been back, Cody's gone 3 with Seth and now 3 with Brock.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. How's it gonna finish? I mean, I don't know what Brock's contract stipulation is, whether he's signed through whatever, if he's got, but who cares? These two are going to get at it. It's going to be violent. Who's going to come out on top?
Seth. I mean, that would be a story if a guy not in the match won. I mean,
Cody.
I had Seth on the ring because I was thinking about he and Seth fought 3 times. And Cody won all of them.
All of them. So, 3-0 versus Seth, 1-1 against Brock.
Yeah. It's going to be Cody. I mean, they've obviously done a very good job of, and rightfully so, of not just protecting Cody, but really, I think to some extent, I don't want to say rehabilitating. I think rehabilitation was kind of the idea when he first got there. Like, we want to make sure people know that now that he's in WWE, he's not going to lose any of his luster, and we want to be careful about that. And I think now He's only lost twice since he's been back. Two, that's it. He lost the WrestleMania match to Roman, and he lost once to Brock. And I think he wins this. This is the end of the feud. I'll be surprised if it goes beyond this. I don't think you'll see Brock for, Brock will take a few months off and be back for, who knows, Survivor Series and Rumble, whatever. They never explained what the motivation was, which of course for me is a problem, but I like both guys in the ring, and I think it's going to be certainly an entertaining match. I think Cody wins.
Okay, a couple of prop bets before we kind of dive out of here tonight. Who will be standing? What will the final shot as the all rights reserved, copyright 2023 is in the bottom right-hand corner. What's that final shot as they go off the air?
Roman, Solo, Paul Heyman, and some other family member celebrating probably on the stage as a shocked, hurt, and betrayed Jay is in the ring.
Is
looking
Jimmy
at them
being consoled by Jimmy, or maybe
it depends on I don't know about console. I mean, let me put it this way. If Jimmy's there, I'll be surprised if he's intervening on Jay's behalf. I think he would be there to be like the shock twist.
Interesting.
I think it's more likely that you would have somebody like perhaps Rikishi.
Okay.
I don't want to say The Rock because
right
at this point, but
hey,
they've been talking about him on TV.
There is a strike right now. He is not on location.
Oh, that's true.
He is not filming right now. Now, maybe he's going to show some solidarity by not appearing on screen while it's going. Who knows? But
yeah.
He is free right now. He is not filming anything at the moment. So for the how many pay-per-views have we gotten now? Probably 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, where it's ended with Roman's music and Roman standing tall.
And I go back to, you may recall, a long time ago when they were originally going to do. I can't remember if it was the first trial or what it was, but remember that they were going to have like a tribal council or something. And they said all the members of the line will be there, and then they scrapped it and they did the trial of Sami Zayn.
Right.
I think you're going to see something like that because of the stipulation. So there's going to be a group. I don't know if it'll be a group, but you're going to see people you haven't seen on TV recently who are members of the NOIE family.
Yep.
Who are going to be at this show.
Dude,
I think they're going to factor in.
Roman's dad, one of the either Afa or Sika from the Head Shrinkers from the 70s and 80s. They've only appeared on TV once during this whole thing when they kind of formally anointed Roman at the top of
they put the
steps there,
lay or whatever on him.
If they're ambulatory and able to get around, I think you see them maybe beforehand giving Roman blessings, putting a lay on him perhaps, just because this is so important to the family and the bloodline. All right, I'm only saying this because the rumor mills have been churning this week that say Bray Wyatt is healthy and Bray Wyatt is expected to return soon, and there's a lot of talk that we may even see Bray Wyatt at SummerSlam getting involved with one of the main events. And they mentioned the three main events, which are really Roman and Jay, Finn and Cody, and Brock and Finn and Seth, and Brock and Cody
as well. Yeah,
and Brock and Cody, with the caveat saying we've also been told it is almost certainly not going to be Finn and Seth.
There's only one of those three matches where it makes any sense to me. And that would be after if Cody beats Brock and then Brock sort of is gone, for Cody to then move on to a feud with a returning Bray Wyatt. The only complication there is he's on the wrong show, but who cares?
None of that matters. They can put him on Raw, right? Exactly. I want to say, unfortunately, I think you're right that the final shot will be however the bloodline match concludes, but. So it makes me think that Bray will not be appearing because I don't think you have Bray returning somewhere in the middle to the back end of that card. I think Bray is one of those talents that gets saved for, just like he returned when he came back to the company, just like he did many, many times over the years. He's showing up at the very end. He's the final shot you see, unless they have Bray going after Roman, which makes zero sense.
No sense.
I guess we may not see Bray. If Bray's coming back at SummerSlam, I'd say we see him Monday at Raw, perhaps. That makes
Agreed.
a lot more sense because Cody is much more likely to close the show on Raw.
And the reason is the other two main events.
I can't wait to see Bray Wyatt come back.
there are logical next steps in the stories of both of those matches. With Cody and Brock, it's presumably the blow off the end, and then Cody, the top star or the top face on Raw, needs something, to do after that, and so that would at least make sense. I don't think it'll be the final shot though, because it would have to be Raw.
If Bray is back and you're going to have him through WrestleMania next year, and if you could somehow lock that in, you bring him out. If this is going to be over be a mess by September, if he comes back, he's a mid card. No chance, Lance. No way. He's too over to be a mid card. I
think he means he is over as in like done. I don't think
I think he does mean that. I'm saying he's still over. He's an anomaly. That's SummerSlam. It's 7:00 on Saturday night, so that's gonna be awesome. And he has one fan. He's on the show. Man, if you go look online, Bray is still beloved. It's people who are bitter like you who haven't made sense of it and don't appreciate Bray's.
Hold on a second, please. You have the floor. Close the show by making sense of what we've seen.
I know, you're right.
Can anyone make sense of what we've seen this year?
Absolutely not. Yeah, right. We've talked no sense, especially when it comes to like what we've seen in WWE. So SummerSlam is going to be awesome. I think it's going to be cool. I think the second half of 2023 is going to be awesome because the Bloodline storyline is not ending anytime soon. If anything, it's going to get even more intriguing. Judgment Day is kind of firing on all cylinders, and they will have some swap outs, but that's not a faction that's going to crumble. And there are people who are kind of returning from injury. The aforementioned Bray Wyatt, but also like AJ is going to get more involved in the next few months. We didn't talk about Logan Paul and Ricochet, which we really should have.
Real quick, that opens the show.
That opens the show? Okay.
It's going to be crazy. I'm worried somebody's going to get hurt. Especially Logan. I'm worried Logan's going to get hurt because they're just planning a crazy spot.
I hope they're practicing, but a lot could go wrong. I tell you, we said it last week when Ricochet did that flip and the way Logan maintained his composure during it. Last night when he had the selfie, have you seen Logan's video from the selfie on social media?
No.
He has taken PR classes. He knows how to do it. The way he was holding it for when Ricochet kicked him, you saw it perfectly. When he fell, he was still holding the phone right to his face.
Yes,
he still caught Ricochet's flip in the air. And even after the flip, when Ricochet took the phone, he held it up. Ricochet tosses the phone back to Logan. In a second and a half, Logan has it on his face, and he's saying, "Oh, that was cold." It was perfect.
I said this in the group chat, but it cracks me up to think that WWE looked at that dude and for like the better part of the year were like, I think he's a face. I think he's
I know.
It's like, are you kidding me? That guy was born to be a heel.
Logan and Ricochet opened the show. Roman and Jay closed the show. I think those are smart.
One quick thing to go back just for a second to something you were talking about before, post SummerSlam.
Yeah,
I think AJ is going to have a bigger role. Maybe Bray comes back. Who knows? I also think Santos Escobar is going to win the U.S. title. I think he's going to be the U.S. champ, and I think he's going to get a push. But the guy who's going to get the big push, I think post SummerSlam is LA Knight. I think
let's hope.
They're like, stuff is already in motion. We're not going to try to shove him in until after SummerSlam. We know he's over, but I think that he's so over right now. Like I think he gets the biggest pop on SmackDown. Right?
He does. We could do this for we could do another 15-minute segment on this. Like we've talked about it. LA Knight, he definitely is the most over the crowd, but he doesn't need to win the Money in the Bank because he doesn't need the title. He doesn't need the belt. He's over. That's an MO that WWE has pulled for years. I don't know if that's the greatest MO in the world. Sometimes you just Sure, put the belt on the guy. He is over.
I think it depends on who it is. I think the challenge. So in LA Knight's case, I think it was fine he didn't win the Money in the Bank. It's fine he doesn't have a title now, but they need to move in that direction. I think it goes, assuming I'm right about Santos Escobar, I think he holds title for a while, drops it to somebody, maybe Austin Theory wins it back. I don't know. Austin Theory, with him not having a title under Triple H, is he going to go back to NXT? Like, who knows what's going to happen with him? But anyway, I don't think you'll have Santos and LA Knight feud unless Santos turns heel on Ray, in which case then it's a natural fit. And then you just have those two guys, and maybe it's Survivor Series, LA Knight, it's his coronation as the new U.S. champion, gets his title. But your point is right. That guys like Seth, for example, he didn't need a title for a long time, and he didn't have one because he was so established. LA Knight has barely won matches despite being super over. So for him, the longer he goes without a title, the more he slides to the carrying cross into the spectrum.
Yeah.
So he eventually will need to get some wins and win a championship. And I think he will. I think post SummerSlam, you're going to see him get a big push on SmackDown.
When he does get that, we'll be here to talk about it on Tuesdays. We miss Kelsey tonight, but she's flying to Minneapolis to see her family. She'll be back next week. You can catch Kelsey on Whatnot app now. They have left their previous app. Graybos is doing baseball card rips on Whatnot. She did her debut show yesterday. It was awesome. So check out Kelsey B on Graybos on Whatnot, pulling packs of wrestling cards. She's talking wrestling here on Tuesdays. We're talking wrestling on Thursday as well at 8 o'clock on WCWF Pod. But we're done tonight. Enjoy SummerSlam. I'm submitting. I'm tapping out. That was it. TG, thanks, man. Enjoy Saturday night, and we'll catch you guys next week on Wrestling Chat with Friends.